British Prime Minister Theresa May is still battling to get Parliament to approve her Brexit plan as she tries to renegotiate her deal with the EU. On Thursday, May suffered another humiliating defeat in the House of Commons. Lawmakers voted against a motion supporting her approach to Brexit. Pro-Brexit MPs in the Prime Minister's own party abstained from the vote, saying she is moving in the wrong direction. The vote is non-binding, but it is likely to undermine EU leaders' confidence that May can win Parliament's support for any type of agreement. Let's bring in DW's Birgit Maas. She's covering this for us from London. Hi, Birgit. So Theresa May is really getting nowhere with Parliament. She's also up against a brick wall in Brussels. What can she possibly do to save her deal?
Well, one way out would be to somehow soften her red lines around the customs union, possibly the single market. That would mean she could get some support from the Labour Party, but she makes no sign of being willing to do that. And as such, we really are in a situation where everybody is at loggerheads with each other. Theresa May with her parliament, but also with the European Union. So there is no obvious way out. The accusation is that Theresa May is just playing for time and she's running down the clock towards the end of March, because that's really just a few weeks left until the UK would crash out the European Union if there was no compromise found.
We have heard that accusation, Birgit, there in London, also in the EU, that Theresa May is indeed running down the clock. Is there anything to that?
Yes, there really seems to be no other strategy at the moment. At least there's nothing that's visible from the outside that Theresa May has any vision of how she could move the process forward and where she actually wants to lead the country. There are lots of MPs here in the UK who are deeply worried that by accident the UK could crash out without a deal that would have serious implications, security implications for business, huge uncertainty, and there have been calls also on ministers to prevent that, to possibly resign so that Theresa May could be prevented from doing that. Nobody wants it. The EU doesn't want no deal. Theresa May doesn't want no deal. The British Parliament doesn't want it. And yet it could happen if no solution is found. The truth is, we don't know. There's going to be another crucial vote in 2 weeks' time here in the UK. In the meantime, Theresa May wants to negotiate with Brussels. But what's going to come out of it, we simply don't know at this stage.
Birgit, a lot of unknowns still, as you're saying, but with 6 weeks to go until March 29th, until the UK is supposed to leave the European Union, what scenario looks most likely at this point in time?
That is really the million-dollar question. I think a lot of people here in the UK, me included, would still hope that there is some sort of deal, because it would be terrible for the UK to crash out, and parliamentarians, all experts, know about how serious that would be. Also for the European Union not being able to somehow find a compromise and keep a friendly contact with the UK. So a lot of people are hoping, but it looks as if this could be really a very, very last-minute scenario.
All right, Birgit Maas for us in London. Thank you very much. So the UK is scheduled to leave the European Union at the end of next month, as we said. People in Germany have never liked the idea, and the latest polls confirm that. In its latest DeutschlandTrend opinion survey for the German public broadcaster ARD, the pollster infratest dimap found that only 16% of Germans welcome the idea of Brexit. An overwhelming 79% of Germans surveyed say they regret that Britain intends to exit the EU. Well, let's bring in Reinhard Schlinkert. He is the managing director of Infratest DimAP Institute. So a big majority of Germans, as we said there, would still like to see the UK stay in the EU. Does that surprise you after all of the chaos and also bad will we've seen from both sides here?
No, not at all. It doesn't surprise me, because when you look at the image of the EU in Germany, it's absolutely positive. There's only a minority of 14% who says the EU has its disadvantage to Germany. And when it comes to the question, do we want to have more national possibilities for the nations themselves? It's only a quarter of Germans say that what we want. And for Germans, the EU stands for free circulation of people and goods. It stands for peace in Europe. So it doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, looking ahead to a very big election here in the EU between the 23rd and the 26th of May, voters in the European Union will decide who they will send to the EU Parliament. Now, the Greens and the far-right populist AfD are both on the rise. Conservatives and Social Democrats, so the centrist parties, are declining. Is that in line with the overall trend in Europe?
Well, a little bit later we will see the voting, the so-called Sunday question. We will see them in our broadcast right now. But of course, the discussion about the climate threat throughout the world, the discussion about social inequality helps the Green Party, helps the Left Party. And, you know, the question of immigration has been helping the right-wing parties. But nevertheless, you will see that the right-wing party in Germany is not as strong in the European election predicted as it is in the national elections for the next Bundestag.
Yeah, you mentioned that just there, Mr. Schlinker, national elections. So let's take a look at that question. If elections were held this weekend, let's take a look at how things would stand here in Germany. Chancellor Merkel's conservative bloc, the CDU-CSU, would win 33% of the vote. The Greens would be at 19%. The Social Democrats would come in third at 18%. The far-right AfD, who we've just been talking about, would get about 10%. The business-friendly FDP would get 7%. And the far-left party would get around 6%. So, Mr. Schlinker, you were talking about this, that the European and German political landscape's looking very similar right now. Why is that? How do you explain that?
Yeah, not extremely similar, because the CDU has 4% more in the European election. Nationwide, it's at 29. The SPD has the same one, and the right-wing party, the AfD, has 3% less in the projection for the European election. So it's not exactly the same. People see that the governing Merkel party has a strong European backhold, and they see that the right-wing party, which is mostly a protest party in Germany, doesn't play the role in the European election. It would play in the national election here in Germany.
All right. Reinhard Schlinkert, Managing Director of the infratest Dimap Polling Institute. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.